deep, deep in the forest of Lithuania. I camped out like in the middle of nowhere, drove up a dirt track for about half an hour off the main road, and then hiked up even further into this forest, and it is really secluded. There are you can't hear any engines, car engines, no aeroplanes in the sky. This is the most secluded forest spot I've probably ever been in Europe. And I come to Lithuania because it's sort of the only kind of place you can come where you can, in Europe, where you can feel like you do otherwise in certain jungles in tropical countries where you have really unspoiled nature. And I mean, besides this very old wooden jetty that I'm on, there's nothing about this lake that's artificial. It's just a natural lake, and there's nothing you can see here that would be any different at the end of the last ice age. So I mean, you're really seeing the prehistoric European environment the early types of people in Europe would have come from. All over Europe it would have been a bit like this. It gives you an idea of the roots of all Europeans in a way. And it's quite fitting that a country where the natural environment's been so well preserved is also a country where the ancient culture of paganism endured for the longest amount of time. The pagans in Lithuania was the last country to convert to Christianity in Europe, and it's around the 15th century, I think, they were still pagan here. And they sent crusades here, and Germans, the Teutonic Knights and things came up here and got them to convert. And even now it's really devoutly Catholic. I mean, yesterday I was in the capital Vilnius, and I saw a man just go down on his knees in prayer in the middle of the high street, and no one batted an eyelid. And that's pretty unusual, nowadays in Europe to see that. And of all kinds of church services, there's every few hundred meters there's a beautiful church. It's really lovely. But also they've allegedly kept a lot of their pagan culture alive too. And in their yearly annual celebrations, which I'm going to attend one of those at the end of the week. I'll see what that's like. But in the meantime, I'm just going to be enjoying the nature, and there's nothing here but the sound of animals. And just now we went for a little walk in the forest with my girlfriend, and this bird flew up in front of us, large brown bird about the size of a pheasant. I'll have to identify it later. And it was a ground nesting bird, and we saw its chicks on the ground, these little fluffy things, really unusual creature I've never seen before. This is the well we need to get the water from.
The rain.
Where's the thing, the bucket then? This slow worm is just being attacked by some kind of jackal or a fox. And you can see where it's been bitten there. On its tail. It's dying. When the fox saw us, it just turned tail and left. Don't know if we should kill the thing to put out its misery.
Žaltis, the grass snake, is a nature spirit in Lithuanian paganism, similar to the Naga of Hinduism. Žaltis is a guardian of the home, so people would keep them as sacred household pets and give offerings of milk to them.
See his face. Spraying this very horrible smelling white stuff to try and make me drop him. It's just shit, basically. Just a normal grass snake. It's very unhappy, so I'm going to let him go.
Harming a grass snake would bring great misfortune to a household. Jaltis is sacred to the sun goddess Saula and is also associated with the cult of Žemininkas, the god of agriculture. The supreme god of Lithuanian mythology was Dieva, and all gods are called Dievas, just like Hindu devas. Kylio Dievas is the god of the road and of travel, and I think he was with me on my trip.
This castle behind me was built in the 14th century by a pagan Duke of Lithuania, Kęstutis, and he used it as a defense against the Baltic Crusades of the Teutonic Knights. And his son rebuilt the castle, his son Vytautas the Great, and he finally defeated the Teutonic Knights after assembling an army here at Trakai, and then heading down south a bit with the army where he met the Teutonic Knights and defeated them. And that was the end of the Germanic incursions into Lithuania. But Vytautas actually ended up converting to Christianity, so maybe the Crusaders were successful.
Compared to Western European nations, Lithuania is very homogeneous, but as an EU member state, that may soon change. Ironically, Lithuania was one of the first multicultural parts of Europe outside the Mediterranean. After Vytautas the Great converted to Christianity, he imported a number of Jews and Turks and Tatar Muslims to the land, and they built communities there. There's not many of them left now, though. Post-communism, religion is important to Lithuanian identity, particularly Christianity, but also the old pagan ways, because they represent a nationalism which was suppressed under the Soviet rule. The only problem is that this new openness to spirituality has led the door open to a number of false spiritual leaders, such as this man Polas, who claimed to be a direct conduit to God in the early 90s and has since built a cult around himself in this glass dome in the forest of southern Lithuania. Rasos, held on St. John's Day, is the midsummer festival dedicated to the goddess Lada. It is still celebrated to this day. As the midsummer sun starts to set, crowds gather at the ancient fort at Canave, and they search the surrounding forests for the mythical bracken blossom, which has never been found. They adorn their heads with oak leaves and sing old folk songs and dance. Later in the evening, they light fires and make offerings to the gods, Lada and Perkunas.
Žeminėlė
half an hour off the main road and then hiked up even further into this forest, and it is really secluded. You can't hear any engines, car engines, no aeroplanes in the sky. This is the most secluded forest spot I've probably ever been in Europe. And I come to Lithuania because deep in the forest of Lithuania. I camped out like in the middle of nowhere, drove up a dirt track for about it's sort of the only kind of place you can come where you can, in Europe, where you can feel like you do otherwise in certain jungles in tropical countries where you have really unspoiled nature. And I mean, besides this very old wooden jetty that I'm on, there's nothing about this lake that's artificial. It's